Árnason. Valbert skorar. Valbert Gunnarsson hefur skorað. Ragnar Margeirsson og skoðamark. Glæsilega gert. Óskar Rafn á móti Bjarna. Og Bjarni með góða sendingu fyrir og Haraldur Ingvarsson.
Hello and welcome to a very exciting bonus episode of the Best of Pod Ever, where we talk to the manager of KR, Gregg Ryder. We're really excited to dive into the conversation that I had with Gregg and my brother Ragnar, because we had a really interesting conversation and you'll soon see why both of us are very excited for the new season. So let's dive into the conversation with Gregg. And we're here with Gregg Ryder, the newly appointed manager of KR. Gregg, thank you so much for coming onto the pod.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
It's a real pleasure speaking to you. There's a lot of questions we have. It was a much publicized process. The previous manager was a bit of a club legend, and then there's a lot of publicity surrounding who would become the next KR manager. Obviously, because KR at the calmest of days is a big institution that gets a lot of attention. And yeah, we were very excited when your name got announced. I think it's a very exciting move for KR.
Yeah, we discussed it some weeks ago on this podcast, and we were, when the announcement was made that he was leaving, we were, a way to put it really, we were obviously big fans of his, and but in terms of the club and where it's been lately, I guess our main feeling, us both being fans, is we've been slightly underwhelmed, and what we thought might happen would be a sort of jobs for the boys type situation. And then they turn around, and what happened is something that we genuinely feel is very exciting, a little bit forward thinking, and with some actual real potential here. So I think the first question we wanted to ask you was, sort of given that, do you feel maybe more that there's a huge amount of pressure stepping into the shoes of a club legend, or does it maybe feel a little bit more like freedom because everyone is expecting big changes, so you can step in there, everything's a clean slate, and you can do what you do, knowing that people will maybe be more accepting of the fact that you can bring something new to the table?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I've not thought a lot about the fact that Runa was there before me. I think there's no hiding the fact that, like you said, he's a club legend, and I've got huge respect for him. It's actually, I haven't said this before, but when I was out of work, 2019, just before Corona hit, so I'd just been at Thor, and I was, really looking for a job, and I was going around clubs in Iceland and sort of emailing them if there was anything going, and I spoke to a couple of coaches, and there was only one or two people who really got back to me at that time. And Runa was one of the guys who got back to me within sort of a couple of hours of me emailing him. And at the time, they just won the league, and he was the biggest name in Icelandic football from a coaching point of view. And I just thought, how good is this? This is why this guy is top, because he's replying to me. He doesn't have to do it at all. He just does it because of the kind of person he is. So, I mean, from a respect point of view for what he's achieved with KR and his career as a coach and as a footballer, I've got huge respect for him. So I would never say anything against what sort of happened in previous years. I think the thing for me is just to focus on trying to make the football club as good as it possibly can be, and make the supporters as proud as they can be of the team and the style of football that we want to produce. I think that's my focus.
No, that's understandable, and I think for this interview we really want to focus on you. We want to try to get to know you and your ideas. So I think that's maybe if we start maybe with a question of you as a coach. What are your overarching sort of tactical philosophies, or overall philosophies as a coach? Who are you as a manager? Maybe is a way to ask that question.
Yeah, I think there's sort of like a twofold answer to that. I think there's the tactical side of things and technical side of things. I want to produce sort of high energy, high intensity football, high pressing, urgency to win the ball back, aggression. And the other part of that is the sort of the culture that you create within the whole football club. I want supporters to feel like they are a part of the journey that we're going on, and people within the football club, the youth coaches, the board, everyone who works at the club, sort of buy in to what we're trying to do from a football point of view. So from a philosophy standpoint, it's first and foremost you try to get the mentality where you want it to be, the character that the team shows and the way it expresses itself on the pitch, and then the coach and sort of playing philosophy is meant to match up to that in terms of high pressure, getting the crowd involved, when you go to press the ball and when you win the ball back and when you make big challenges and big blocks. And I think it all sort of comes together. Hopefully, at least that's the plan.
Absolutely. I want to actually shoot something in there. He mentioned something about youth and things. You yourself, you're quite a young man still.
Thank you.
And I'm wondering about that in the sense that coming into a team like this as the coach, you're still quite young. You don't have some of the professional footballing player background that a lot of these coaches have. How does it feel? And you say you want to sort of change the ethos of the club and the culture around the club, which I absolutely commend you for and I respect greatly. Do you think that being sort of young and coming from a slightly different background, do you think that makes it difficult, or do you think maybe it helps you in that you can connect better with the players who themselves are young? Or do you think this plays in at all?
I think that I don't think really age comes into it. I started coaching first team football in Iceland when I was 25. I'd been coaching in the Europa League at the age of 23 when I was at IBV. So I've had a lot of experience in different countries. I coached in the United States before I came to Iceland, coached in England, coached in Denmark for the last 3 years. So I think age is just a number. And I mean, I've been coaching for nearly 20 years now, and I know I'm 35, but that's quite a long time. So I would say that I've experienced so many different sort of things. I've experienced promotion, I've experienced relegation, I've experienced, crazy things that happen only in the football world. So I feel now I'm sort of at a point in my career where I felt that I was ready to go back into the management side of things. I felt after I'd been at Thor, I wasn't. And that's why I went away. I went to Denmark and I went to learn because I felt like I needed to learn. But I've had sort of 3 years out in Denmark and I really wanted to come back and sort of show what I'd learned. Of course, I've still got hundreds and thousands of things I need to learn more, but I feel like I'm at a point where I can do something. So that's sort of what I'm hoping to show now.
And if we just quickly touch on your sort of time in Denmark, there was some media reports sort of in and around before you took over Thor, linking you to jobs in England and Scotland, and then you moved to Denmark, like you said, to maybe take a bit of a different step, becoming a youth and assistant manager in HB. Was your connection to Per Rode, who was at Throtter? Was that instrumental to choosing HB, or was that purely coincidental, or what was the reason for you choosing and moving to HB?
Yeah, I think first and foremost it was because of Per. Obviously, I worked with Per at Throtter, so that was the link. But like I mentioned before, I started coaching as a head coach very early on, 25 years of age, and I'd come to a point at Thor when, just to be honest with you, I was a little bit disappointed with myself. I felt like I'd made a lot of mistakes and I felt like I needed to improve and to get better. And to be honest with you, there's only so much you can learn as a head coach by making your own mistakes. I think I'd come to a point where I thought, I'm still young. I was 31 years old, and I was like, I need to go and learn in a different culture. I need to learn from different people and see how different head coaches do it and make myself better. So the thought process behind Denmark and sort of the positions that I took in terms of under 19 transition coach, assistant coach, was just all about trying to develop myself to make myself better, because I think I'd hit a little bit of a wall in my career, and I wasn't the place and the level where I wanted to be. So that was the thought process, I would say, about going there. And then, like you say, the link to pair was, it was really helpful. That sort of helped me achieve what I wanted.
Wow. I mean, that's an absolutely commendable sort of outlook on things. It's great to hear. And what I'm wondering is, you went to Korea and worked largely as a youth coach. And then in reading your interview with fótbolti.net in Iceland, you made a point of focusing on youth. It was trying to press you on sort of signings and things, which you dodged well. But you did mention the importance of youth. Obviously, it's a given that youth are important. But did working as a youth coach give you think, more insight into, more experience, and do you think you're better placed in nurturing the young talent and making them the sort of driving force behind KR in the short-term future?
I think that before I went to Denmark, I thought I was pretty good at integrating young players. I felt like I had a decent record of doing that at both Rotter and at Thor. But then when I went to Denmark, I had my eyes opened and realised I hardly knew anything. So I thought, Denmark was brilliant for me in terms of seeing the amount of detail that they go into and trying to produce and help develop young players. I was fortunate to be at KR at a time when I think they were breaking records for playing the youngest team ever in Denmark with an average age of, I think it was lower than 20, one of the games. So the sort of investment in the youth there was huge, and it helped me realise even more the importance of young players. And one of my regrets that I had when I was at Throtter was that I didn't try to implement a successful pipeline of talent, on the very first year at Throtter. So basically what happened at Throtter was I got there and I just had a focus of first team. And I think that's common for a lot of managers. I think they think, I've got to get the short term right, which is correct because you've got to get results. But then I wasn't quick enough then to put more focus on the youth, because after I'd been there for what was the third and fourth year, there wasn't enough players coming through the youth system, and it meant that we had to go abroad or we had to, search Iceland. Whereas maybe if I'd put more emphasis on that first year, trying to generate our own youth players and develop our own youth players, then maybe by year 3 or year 4, we wouldn't have had to go and look, far and wide for players. It would have just been on our own doorstep. So it was something that I wanted to develop, that side of my game. And I think when I come back now to KR, and obviously I saw the huge potential they've got a lot of good young players in the squad. And it was something that sort of excited me, and it sort of like made me think, I can go there, I can learn, I can do everything that I've learned, put it into practice and see if we can start generating that sort of conveyor belt of young KR players coming through youth and put them into the first team.
Wow. Yeah, I would love to see that, definitely. Sort of to put you on the spot, you said you thought you knew a lot and you didn't know anything, and now you know something. Do you think you could pick out the sort of biggest, most maybe hard-hitting or biggest lesson you learned about working with youth players or youth development, something that really opened your eyes?
I think that the thing that I learned, I don't know if I knew this before or not, but what really hit home was the sort of inconsistency that you get of young players. Like, they can go through a cycle of maybe 3 or 4 weeks where they're just unbelievable, and then they can go through maybe a month, 2, or even 3 months where they're just not good at all. And the importance is not to lose faith in them, and that if they show that they can hit a certain level, you have to have the belief that they can bring that level back. Because often in first team football, you need a result on Saturday, and therefore sometimes the young players get sacrificed because if they're not playing well, there's no guarantee that they'll play well again next week. So I think it's just having faith in young players, of course, working with them as closely as you possibly can, giving them as much detail as you can, and basically just trying to prepare them as best as possible for what they've got to face in their careers, because there are so many challenges. But yeah, I would say that sort of roller coaster in terms of performance levels that you get from young players is probably the thing that probably noticed the most.
Yeah. You mentioned there just, the things that they're going to experience in their career. Do you think that you will approach it differently in Iceland versus Denmark, given the fact that, in Denmark, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, they're playing in a league with sort of higher potential. They might see themselves as, more likely for superstardom, whereas in Iceland, maybe not. Do you think that it's going to be the same, different? Any thoughts on that in terms of attitudes of youth?
I think every country I've been in, you see different sort of characteristics within the culture that you're working in, and I think it's important to understand that culture and what drives people and what motivates people. I would say that one of the mistakes that I've made early in my career, and it's not necessarily down to country, it can even be in Iceland. I feel it can even be in terms of location, whether you're in Reykjavik or Akureyri or Reykjavik or the Western Islands. I feel that the towns, in Iceland are different and they have different sort of traditions in those towns. But I felt that one of my mistakes that I'd made at one of my earlier clubs was that because I was young, I tried to almost separate myself a little bit from the players, and I didn't sort of get a connection that I would want with the players in comparison to other clubs that I've been at. So I really sort of learned from that mistake, and I really value personal relationships with players, getting to know the players on a personal level and knowing, how their family life is and how some of them have got jobs or education and what they're doing for those things, and really get to know them as a person. Because I feel when you get to know them as a person, it's a lot easier to coach them, because Icelandic people, I feel, are really, really respectful. I think it's very, very clear line for them that you can talk about things on a social level, how their family is, but then when you cross the white line and you're in training sessions or you're at a game, they have the respect for you as a coach, and they'll listen to exactly what you say, whether it's criticism or praise. So I would say that's another one of the areas. I'm probably going to list 1,000 things that I've made mistakes with, but that's another area that I've sort of learned, and I think Denmark definitely sort of helped me with that as well.
If we focus maybe on Coward, because and there is, at the time of recording, you don't have an assistant manager. I'm not going to go and ask you about who you're going to bring in or anything like that, but it's more maybe about your role versus the assistant versus the other staff at the club. How do you see that division of labor? Because you can't go in and do everything yourself, right? So how do you see that split?
Yeah, I think again, another area I've sort of learned about is delegation. In my early days, I tried to do exactly what you just said and do everything myself. And anyone who's in a management position knows that's not how these things work. So hopefully I'm getting better at sort of delegating tasks. But the things that I'm very lucky with at Cowan now is I've got a goalkeeper coach who I work with at Throtta, who I actually hired at Throtta, Jamie Brasington. He's also the under-21 goalkeeper coach in Iceland. And he's, I don't say this to his face, but hopefully he doesn't listen to this, but he's very, very good. He's really good at his job. Yeah, he's a top guy as well. He's one of my best friends as well. So that just sort of, that helps the process. And then we've also got Guðjón, who is a physical trainer who I also worked with at Throtta. So I was really lucky that two of the guys I'd worked with already. And I would argue who's the best physical coach in Iceland. So in terms of my staff that's currently in place, I've been really lucky with that. I need to bring in an assistant who will also be full-time, which I think it's quite rare to have a head coach, assistant coach, physical and goalkeeper coach all full-time in Iceland. That's quite uncommon. So I'm lucky that I've got the backing from the board to do that. And then the roles for the assistant coach, obviously I've worked as an assistant coach now for 3 years, so I would say I know it quite well. And it's basically in many ways working opposite to the head coach. So for example, if I'm on the training pitch and I'm coaching high pressure, then the assistant coach is then working with the other team on how they build up from the back, just for an example. And there's many sort of aspects of the daily work that is the same as that. Maybe I'll be watching how opposition press, he'll be watching how they build up, So there's these areas, and basically you try to complement each other in the work that you do. So yeah, I'm definitely trying to work on my delegation skills.
And would you be looking for someone who's very similar to you, like so you don't like you can do like an unspoken bond kind of thing, or do you want someone completely opposite from you, or I guess somewhere in the middle would be the politically correct answer, but like but like what sort of mix are you looking for?
I have a very, very big belief in like the video analysis part of the game, and I also really, really want to develop the individuals at Cower. So we're going to put a lot of emphasis on individual plans and individual sessions, individual analysis. So I need that side of things from my assistant. They need to be really good in those aspects: video analysis, working in individual groups, small groups, things like that, because we need to develop the player. I think in terms of sort of characteristics of the person, they have to be trustworthy. I've got to trust them, because when you're working in football, we've got 4 guys that will be in the office: me, the assistant, the goalkeeper coach, and physical coach. And often when that door closes behind you, it is just you 4 guys, and it can sometimes be a little bit of a lonely world, especially when things are not going well. So you've got to know that you as a staff, you have each other's backs, and that you can trust each other 100%. So that sort of levels of trust and ability to work together, it's huge for me. I've got to really trust the guy. And then finally, if there was sort of like a dream person out there, I would also like them to have played, because like you mentioned earlier on, I haven't played at a high level professionally. So having someone who can show players exactly how to do things rather than just being told, and it's also a big benefit to me. So yeah, I'm quite demanding in terms of what I'm just thinking about it now. I'm quite demanding what I want from assistants. So you might be waiting for a while till I find that.
It's fair. You want to be, I mean, it's better to be a bit demanding and want someone good than to just settle, right? So that makes sense. If we sort of go back to Coward, I know you've mentioned, you want to play this sort of football you want to play, you want to get maybe the fans behind you and the team. And as a Coward fan myself, I know that and at the start of every single season, one of the first questions being asked about the league in general is, can Coward win the league? It's just a thing that we like. It's the media ask every single year, and I'm not going to ask you that, but it's more if you can maybe a bit more concrete on like what do you think are the sort of short term goals for Coward this season? Is it more to solidify? Is it more to you're probably not going to say you don't want to win the league, but like, do you have any other short-term goals for Coward this season specifically?
Yeah, I think maybe to work backwards a little bit. Obviously, I've signed a 3-year contract. I had a good job in Denmark. I was happy where I was. My family was happy. And of course, if I'm going to come back to Iceland now, which I have, the only way that I'm coming back to Iceland, I think, is to win something. It's a 3-year contract, and therefore, by the time that 3-year contract is done, I need to have won something. That's by far, it's my biggest motivation in this decision to come to Cower. So I know you asked there for short term, so I haven't completely answered your questions directly. But on a long term basis, we need to win something. I think on the short term, I think expectations, like you mentioned there, of Cower, are we going to win the league? I think the important thing is, from my understanding, from the fans and from people I've spoken to, is that Cowan need to compete. That's the most important thing. They need to go into every season and they need to be competitive in terms of positions they finish in the league. Every game they go into, when they play against the other big teams, they need to compete. So I would say short term, that's the goal. And yeah, that's what we want to also achieve long term.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You've been away from Iceland for a few years now. I don't know how much you've been able to watch Icelandic football. I know myself, it's not that easy from afar, but maybe sort of first impressions, the main challengers, your impression of how the league is shaping up. I know we're still in December at the time of recording, so like there haven't been any major signings. There's been 1 or 2 managerial changes, a few more rumored, but sort of what's your impression of the league? Maybe your competitors for next year?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I've been in Iceland for 10 years previous to this, and I think it's the usual suspects are normally in and around there. You always have Valur, Víkingur and Breiðablik, FH, Stjarnan. So I think those teams will always be up there challenging. Obviously, style of football, has gone up dramatically since I was last here because of Vikingur and Breidablik and what they've managed to achieve in terms of results, but also the philosophies and the way that they've played. So, of course, I would imagine them to be in and around Valor, who've got a top coach in charge of them who's very well structured, and they have a lot of money that allows them to almost dominate the market financially. Stjarnan, who we've played a couple of games in both competition now, so we played Stjarnan and FL, and Stjarnan, they've got a lot of good young players. Yeah, they play a really good, attractive style of football. So I would, of course, expect them to be contenders as well. I would also like to add, I think the standard of coaching has gone up a level since I've been away. I think there's some top young coaches coming through, some guys with some fantastic ideas and the way that they want the teams to play. So I just feel that I'm lucky that I'm there to sort of compete with these, and hopefully we can try to raise the bar of just Icelandic football the way that they've done it over the past years and see if we can go higher.
We touched upon it once or twice on the pod this season is sort of the lack of international and foreign managers and players, especially managers in the league over the last few years. Obviously, you've been in this league, you've been in this country before. How do you see that? How do you see this sort of? Is there an attitude, or is your impression of sort of working as a foreigner in this country versus, for example, Denmark or the US? Any thoughts on this? That sort of, because there is this lack of maybe exposure to foreign managers over the last decade or so.
Yeah, I've wondered that myself. Sometimes I find some strange things in the media where I'm not sure if it would always said the same thing if it had been an Icelandic person. Maybe that sounds a little bit bitter if you want to say that, but I'm not 100% sure how foreign players or coaches are always perceived in the media. I think it differs, but overall, the Icelandic people are fantastic people. I've got an Icelandic wife and family here, and the sort of approach to life and also their work ethic is second to none. And I feel at home in Iceland, and I love to work here. And when I was in Denmark, there was often times when I missed their sort of view on life and how hard that they work every day. Not to say that they don't in Denmark, but it's on another level. It's on another level in Iceland. I don't know if I've answered your question there, or if I went off on a tangent.
That was a very broad question.
But do you feel it as a challenge being a foreigner, or do you feel it as does it feel sort of normal and comfortable, or just uncomfortable challenge, or nice and challenging challenge? If you can sort of follow my eloquence.
I think you're probably, in any country, if you're a foreigner, you do have less time to prove yourself than if you're from that country. I think you see that, and that's the same for the players. If we bring in a foreigner now, they have to be one of the best players in the team. And if they're not, then that's it for them. That you have to be really, really good. And the reason why is because when foreigners come in, they're taking the place of an Icelandic person. They're taking their spot on the team. So, of course, they have to be better than that. And I suppose it's the same for a coach. If you're going to take the place of an Icelander, you have to do your job exceptionally well. So is there could be maybe a little bit of pressure, but, when you're in a job like this, there's pressure regardless of whether you're a foreign coach or an Icelandic coach. There's always pressure, and that's not just at Kawa, it's at any club in Iceland, any club in the world, there's always pressure. And maybe there's just that added amount, being at this club because it's such a unique and special club.
I just want to ask you maybe more about yourself as a person. We're touching about being foreign in Iceland and Denmark. What made you sort of look outside of England, outside of moving to the States, moving to Scandinavia or the Nordics? What made you take that jump at such an early age? What was the draw to go to Iceland, to move abroad?
It was, I decided that I want to be a football manager when I was in the United States, and I was playing on a scholarship and I broke my leg in quite a bad injury playing, and I was out for about a year. And during that year, I started getting into coaching, and then I changed my degree. When I say I changed my degree, I didn't have a decided degree. I just did whatever they would let me to do so I could play football. So then I actually decided, okay, I'll get a proper degree, and I changed to management, which was business management, but there was many areas of that sort of swapped over for football. And then after my degree, and I, sort of looked at myself and was like, okay, where do I go now? And this thing in Iceland popped up. Everyone that I spoke to just said, it's impossible for you to be a football manager. You haven't played. You've got no chance. That was just the narrative. I got told that over, hundreds of times that it's not possible. So, Iceland, this thing came up in Iceland, and it was to work, with an under-19 team, which I would never have been able to do in England. And then I think I was just fortunate that opportunities presented myself in Iceland, and I was able to sort of move up the ladder, so to speak, and get better jobs. And that's basically how I come to be at this spot where I'm at now. I think, okay, I can give myself a little bit of credit. I think I am extremely stubborn. That's also a negative. I'm extremely driven. Like, I know what I want. I know I want to get to the highest level in football management, and I will do absolutely anything to get there, in terms of my career. And sometimes I feel sorry for my family because they're following me around all these places. But my wife knew that when she married to me, that was the deal. So I think, I'm sort of unwavering in what I want to achieve. I just want to make sure I can push myself to go as high as I can. And if that means that this job is as high as I get, then at least I can say to myself that I gave it everything. I really hope it's not. I hope that there's a lot more to come. But yeah, I think it's the drive that sort of pushes me on.
How it should be. I guess I feel a little bit sorry for your wife, but she knew what she was getting herself into, right?
My wife's actually at home in England with my parents right now because I had flights booked over there to go and see my mom and dad and take the kids to them. And then I got this job. So I was like, okay, you're going to have to take them. So she's not even in Denmark in our home. She's with the parents-in-law while I'm sitting in Iceland doing this podcast. So yeah, she got a raw end of the deal.
Oh God. Yeah, well, send our regards, I guess, to your wife and apologize to her. But just, we don't want to take up any more of your time. It's been amazing having you. It's been really, really great to hear what you're all about and get to know you. I guess just to wrap it up, do you have any message directly to the fans of Cowhead, of anything you would like to say? What would you like to say to them?
Yeah, we've got a fan meet and greet, I suppose you could call it, this weekend. So on Saturday night, we're getting all the supporters together in like the local pub. That's a very English thing to do, I suppose. Get all the fans together, and I'm gonna say a little bit to them. I think, from my point of view, long before I became a football coach, I was a football fan, and I love football, just like you guys do, and I have the understanding of what it's like to be a fan. And I think the important thing is for any club is that no club can be a club without its supporters and without its fans. So it's really, really important to me that I get them on board with the sort of journey that we're going on. I want them to be with us in the highs and with the lows, and I hope there's a lot more highs than lows. I would say that that's probably the main message, that I just want them to join us and give it the best possible shot that we can all do together, because, it's a corny saying, but you're better together, you're stronger together. So, yeah, I think that would be the message.
That's perfect. Like Ragnar said, thank you so much for being on this pod. And we like we said a bunch of times before, we're really excited that you're here. The two of us can't wait for next season. We'll be watching every game, and thank you so much. And it was a real pleasure.
Yeah, and thank you to you guys. It's a pleasure to speak to you. I think you're doing great work, trying to, like I say, put a spotlight on the league from a foreign standpoint. I think it's necessary. I think we should try to educate people and let people get involved in Icelandic football as much as we can. So I think you're doing a fantastic job. And, if you guys ever need anything or you want a little bit of information, I've got no problem in sharing. So I'm always here if you need a chat or whatever.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Good speaking to you, and have a good evening or morning wherever you are, and we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Have a good
All
evening.
the best. Cheers. Bye.